Hello everybody, my name is Thilo. I'm a backpacker from Germany, and this is the story of how I came to the country of Trinidad, how I decided to walk across the country of Trinidad with no money, no equipment, nothing, just my clothes, and how I got famous with doing so. So I'm not your usual kind of backpacker, right? Because I have a dream of seeing the Amazon rainforest. And I have a dream of traveling there without using a single plane and with earning every cent along the way. So I started with no money, and maybe afterwards like travel around the whole world. Yeah, and the thing is, there are like oceans in between, and the only real way to cross an ocean with that budget is to work as a crew member. And if you work as a crew member, you go where captain says you go. So you can't really decide. And captain needed to fix his boat, and Trinidad is famous for dry docks. And the thing is, I've never heard of this country called Trinidad before in my life until 2 weeks before I arrived there. So I started like looking up the Wikipedia article, and it's like saying like high crime rate and all of those kind of things, and my family were calling me like, Thilo, there's so many people who get killed there. But I decided, hey, now I'm here, I want to at least see a little bit of the country. So I decided to travel a little bit around there. And I actually met like all kinds of really nice people. I met someone in the train station who just decided to go on a hike with me. And I met the local scouts, and they were like, hey, you can sleep here, no problem. And I found people to be really, really nice. And then I decided, you know what, I want to see as much of the country as possible. And how do you do that? I decided to just walk from one side of the country to the other. And as soon as I told anybody about this, basically everybody except one of the guys from the scouts told me that this is insane, that I'm gonna get killed, I'm gonna get robbed, I'm gonna get kidnapped. And I thought, you know, that's kind of stupid. I don't think it will be like this. I think it will be possible. And even more, I think it will be fun. I want to prove people wrong. I want to walk across the country and just to prove it, that it is possible and that people are kind, I want to walk with nothing other than my camera. Nothing, no food, no tents, no water. I just want to start with my clothes and my camera and my passport. That's it. Now that I decided to do this walk and walk across the country with no equipment, no money, nothing, and prove that people in Trinidad are actually really kind, I at least wanted to know some people about it. The thing is, back then I had like a YouTube channel for a year, and I had like 300 subscribers. And also had like an Instagram with 80 followers. Basically, nobody really was following my trip other than my parents and like a few people from the US. So I decided to make some reels on Instagram about it. I uploaded like 3 of them, and a few days later, like 2 people from Trinidad followed me. And I guess those were people I actually met somewhere in real life and told about my Instagram channel. So I thought, you know, I want at least a few people of Trinidad to know about this, because it kind of defeats the purpose of proving it to everybody and then nobody like really watching it. So I decided to write media organizations. I like did a huge list, every media organization. I wrote like 16 different television stations, radios, newspapers, everything, and nobody cared. Except one newspaper. They were like, hey, I think your story is kind of interesting, we're gonna come over and we're gonna interview you. And they published it in the paper, and a few people actually read it. Still nobody followed me. And then 2 days before I wanted to start, like a friend of mine came up to me and said like, hey, in Trinidad everybody uses TikTok, you should use TikTok. So I re-uploaded the videos from Instagram on TikTok, and the next morning I had like 1,000 followers. And the morning after that I had like 3,000 followers. And then I got a call from the television. They were like, hey, we want to film your start, and we want you on the morning show when you start. And I was like, whoa, I've never been in the television before in my life. This is crazy. And then the morning finally came and I started my journey. I needed to get up early in the morning at like 5 o'clock because I needed to go to the morning show. Then I drove up all the way to the northeastern point of Trinidad, the lighthouse in Toco, and the television crew followed my first steps, and I got another interview with the newspaper, and I went on Radio Toco. It was super crazy. Never been on the radio before, never been on the television before, nothing like that. And also like my follower count skyrocketed to like 5,000–6,000 followers. It was crazy. But still I needed to do this walk. And the idea at the beginning was to just like really rough it out, to just sleep on the ground inside of churches, to ask people for water, and to just go to shops and like restaurants and ask them during closing time if they have like any leftover food. And eventually I arrived in a small village. I didn't find any restaurants, and then I found a small church there, and I just asked the ladies if I could sleep there. They didn't know anything about me, but they were kind enough to let me stay there. And the thing is, a lot of people ask me questions like, what did you eat the first day? Well, I had a breakfast before, but other than that, the first day I ate nothing, because I didn't find any restaurants who I could ask for food. Did I brush my teeth? I didn't, because I didn't have a toothbrush with me. How did I wash myself? I didn't, because I didn't have a shower with me. So on day 2, I decided to fix as many of these problems as possible. The first problem was, of course, I was hungry. This problem was quickly solved because when I woke up, my follower count skyrocketed like from 5,000 followers to 10,000 followers. And when I walked down just the village, there was a bar from a woman who just seen my TikTok videos. And she was like, hey, I saw you, I like you, come, I invite you to some food. And I got a big fish sandwich. And not only that, I just continued walking, and like every half an hour a car would stop and it would give me water. It would give me so much water that I don't really needed to ask for water. I also found like a car of a health worker who was like, hey, I've got some like sanitary things here, like take a toothbrush and a toothpaste. Now the only real problem left I had is that I need a shower. But that was quickly fixed because in the northeastern point of Trinidad you have a lot of waterfalls. And I saw a waterfall on the map, and I decided to just go off-road and go there and take a swim in the waterfall. When evening came around, I arrived in like a small fishing village, and there was a guy in the bar who actually heard of me and was like, hey, you know what, we've got some rooms in our back of the bar, you can sleep in our rooms. So this was the first night sleeping on a bed in like, I think 3-4 months at this time. Because on the ocean I slept like on the sofa, before that I slept like on a tent and like a cave. I slept in all kinds of places, but I never slept in a bed. Now on day 3, food and water really ceased to be a problem. Like every half an hour someone would stop and give me some water and give me some food. It was no problem. I never had to ask for water once. I wasn't thirsty. Everything was good. I was so good actually that I had decided to call my cousin and tell him about how awesome my walk is, and turn around the corner, and all of a sudden 2 guys just ran out of the jungle. Like one guy jumped on me, he tried to catch my phone, I threw my phone away on the other side of the road, like we wrestled a little bit, I shook him off, and we both dived for the phone. I was like a little bit faster than him, I got the phone, and then I just started running. Meanwhile I was like screaming at them, hey, leave me alone, go away, stuff like that, and they were just like following me. And luckily, at that moment, a car drove by. And I started screaming at the car, hey, stop, stop, stop! And the car stopped. And I got in, and the car drove away.
It's no problem.
It was a woman, and I have to say, to this day, I'm so thankful for this woman. I'm not sure what would have happened if she wasn't there. I did not want to get a fight with 2 people at once. But now, I didn't know what to do. I still believed in my mission. I still believed that most people in Trinidad are kind, but now it kind of sounds ironic. Like this guy tried to prove that Trinidadians are wrong, and he couldn't even make it to day 3 without people trying to rob him, right? It really sounds wrong. And especially this is why I decided, okay, now I have to complete this journey. So the woman drove me to the police station, and the police took my witness statement and everything. Luckily, I had a friend with the scouts where I was sleeping this far before, and he came over and he drove me all the way back to the place where it happened. I did a social media post about it. Now it was like 7 o'clock at that time, so it's already dark. And I still had to do like 10 kilometers. And this guy, like at a weekday in the middle of the evening, he just decided to follow me with his car for like more than 2 hours, walking 10 kilometers across the country. And another problem was I had no idea where to sleep tonight. So I looked up on the internet and I found that there was like a Hindu temple in the next city where I would arrive. So I just decided to message the Hindu temple. And this Hindu temple, when getting like at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening, a message from like a random guy was like, hey, can I sleep at your place? I really need a place to sleep. Had a tough day. They immediately say yes. And not even that. When I arrived there, like there were 10 people. Everybody got together. Everybody brought like some different kinds of fruits. They got like plantains, and they got like some sauce and some roti and all kinds of food. One worked in like a pharmacy and was like, hey, I thought you heard about your walk. I'm gonna give you like some medication for like your feet and this, all that stuff. Also, we're gonna wash your clothes and we're gonna give you a shower. And you can sleep in the temple. Actually, like one of the guys decided to stay with me the whole night, and I've just received the most kindness of people I just randomly contacted. So even more than before, at the evening of day 3, I was convinced that there are still amazing people in Trinidad, and that I especially now have to show this to everybody who is following me at this point in the journey. So day 4, I finally left the Hindu temple with lots of food and lots of good wishes and went on my way. And day 4 is when it really went crazy. Because now I was in a little bit more of an urban area and everybody stopped me. Like I've got 3 cars in a row. Like one car would stop and another car would stop and another car would stop. And I had to talk to like 3 people, take 3 photos before I could continue. And sometimes while I was doing it, another car would see me and would stop. Like people tried to invite me to their cafe. Freaking crazy. I walked the highway. I started I think like at 9, and it took me like, instead of 4 hours, it probably took me like 7 hours to walk the entire journey. I had so much food, I couldn't eat the food. I started to give the food back to cars who stopped because I had too much food and water. It was when I arrived in a village where I wanted to stay for the night, it was already dark and I didn't find a place to sleep. So I looked at the map and I found out there's some kind of Baptist church, and I just went over. And yeah, those people were just spontaneous enough to, when this weird guy who is sweaty and just tells them that he wants to walk across the country, that they just say, okay, you can sleep in my church. And like only like a few people of them have actually heard of me in the radio, but still they gave me some food and some water and I was good. I now decided to take a little bit of a more like less populated route with less cars going by, and it was really good decision. I walked down the countryside and still eventually people recognized me somehow, somewhere, but most of the time I had my peace and quiet. And eventually I was close to arriving to a village. And then more people started stopping, like cars started coming to me, and actually people started telling me that they were specifically there for me, because somehow everybody now knows where I am. And then I arrived in the village and I had reason to be scared because the whole streets were lined with left and right groups of people who just wanted me to take photos with each of them individually. Some people wanted me to sign their shirts, other people wanted me to, like, I don't know, take photos with their children. And there were also some people who were really angry at me because I was robbed the day before or 2 days before, and they thought like, hey, you make our country look bad, why you do that, why you come here to... You know what, I need to get out of here. I have to go to the police station. So I escaped the masses and went to the police station, and the police actually was really kind. Maybe it's for their image, I don't know, but they shared the food that they just cooked with me, and one of the police guys said, all right, you don't have to go and search for a place to sleep. I'm going to call someone, I'm going to arrange something. They didn't allow me to sleep in the jail cell, but they arranged the place to sleep with me. And once they arranged the place to sleep with me, I went inside there, locked the door, and for some reason, like 20 minutes later, people started to find out where I am. And like throughout the whole evening, all the time, someone would like knock at my door. Like from this time, I also decided to not tell anybody where I exactly went because that was a crazy day. Now on day 6, an organization called Hunters Search and Rescue joined me along my journey. And also a television show joined me, at least at the beginning, called Balance, and we walked through like small villages, and he just knows as many people as people know me. It's like crazy. He just knows everybody personally. He talked to some of the farmers, and he gave me some like new fruits I never tasted before in my life. I tasted like chocolate bean, like the bean from like cacao tree the first time in my life. I tried something called tanko bean, which is really cool. And also like some other fruits I don't even remember. Like it was like pretty cool. The hunters, he had some contact with like a preschool, and they slept the night in the preschool. It was a pretty cool preschool because the preschool had some monkeys and some tortoises and some parrots. It's like, do all preschool have that? Is it like common for preschools to have like those animals? Like when I was like in a preschool, we had toys. We didn't have monkeys, we didn't have tortoises, we didn't have parrots. No, this heaven was kind of unremarkable, and that luckily on purpose, because all this just was crazy. And I just decided to just do nothing, just walk through like the fields, not even villages, not small villages, just like the middle of nowhere. And that's exactly what I did. And it was amazing, because I am kind of like an introvert. And a lot of people ask me, hey Thilo, if you're an introvert, why do you do social media? The thing is like, it's the difference of speaking to a camera or being like stopped like 10 times in 20 minutes or even more sometimes, right? It's a difference of like meeting people all the time, like in real life, people wanting to take photos, or just like seeing some comments on social media when you can just like turn off your phone and put it in your pocket and it's gone. And on the end of day 7, I ended up in a small village with a mosque. Once I told them my story and asked for a place to sleep, they immediately agreed. They were the most kindest people ever. They washed my clothes, they just gave me food. They gave me so much food. Like if you ever sleep in a mosque and visit some Muslims, you will get fed. Like, so after leaving the Muslims, I saw on the map there was something called a mud volcano. And I've never heard of a mud volcano before. And since I like trying out new things and seeing weird things, I decided to visit that mud volcano. And on top of that, the mud volcano was also kind of far off, not next to the main roads. So I went to the mud volcano, and yeah, it was just a small volcano, but some people told me that the mud of the mud volcano is really good for my skin, and I put it on. And those people also turned out to be some Indians, who then invited me back to their home. And after I turned up there with like mud on my face and on my arms, they gave me food and we talked, and I eventually found out that this celebration they're having was actually a funeral, which was kind of embarrassing. Like if I would be on a funeral, I wouldn't want to have mud on my face. But this mud volcano was also somewhat far off, especially if I wanted to continue down the road. I continued to like very far off country roads. Like this is like, there is no asphalt, it's just like a dirt path traveling through like fields. I arrived in a village where people didn't recognize me. And sometimes people would talk to me, but they wouldn't talk to me because they saw me on social media. Children would run by and scream, "Foreigner, foreigner, foreigner." And one woman actually approached me and talked to me, not because of social media, but I was the first white guy she's ever seen in her entire life. And she was older. And I arrived at like a city or a town, I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's called Fifth Company because of like something in the independence of Trinidad, I think. Don't quote me on that, but this is also a very bizarre thing. This community was just Baptist. There was nothing else. It's just like 5-6 Baptist church. Everything was Baptist church. So I ended up staying at a Baptist church. It was really cool, because they also invited me in their community, how is it called, community council, and I talked to them about creating like a Facebook profile to them, and they let me stay then in their conference room. And honestly, I have to say, at least the 2 Baptist community I met were also really kind. So the next day really was unspectacular. I continued to just walk across country roads. This time there weren't even villages, which was nothing, nothing going on. And eventually, after walking through like fields for the whole day, which was super refreshing for me, like nobody's talking to me, nothing going on for like hours on end, not even Wi-Fi, I just can focus completely on walking. I ended up in the next village and I stayed at a Presbyterian church. However, day 10 changed a little bit because I heard there was a mud volcano, and actually one of the guys of the Presbyterian church followed me. And we were walking through villages. And I love walking through villages, especially really far out villages, because you just have so much weird stuff going on there. Because this time we had a locust plague. And the locust plague was like biblical size, right? So you just walk down the road and all of a sudden there were just locusts everywhere. It was crazy. Like the roads were covered with locusts. The thing is, like 300 meters after this, there's just no locusts. It's just like one area. It's like, I don't know, 200 meters, everything's locust. You walk out of there, not a single locust anywhere to be seen. Eventually, the guy from the Presbyterian church had to go home to his children, and I had to go in a mud volcano. So I went to this mud volcano. I found some young people there who like helped me with filming it, and yeah, I went the first time with my whole body inside the mud volcano, and I really recommend it. It's really fun because you just buoyant in the water, right? It's like it's not like water. You swim on top. You don't need to you don't sink. And my first fear was like you sink. No, you don't sink. You just swim on top of it. But you kind of like get stuck a little bit. It's kind of a little bit hard to move inside there. But honestly, like being inside this mud is like a really cool feeling. Awesome part is that you can't really shower yourself after this because it's in the middle of nowhere, and the only way to wash yourself is if you go to the ocean. So I go to the ocean. I took my stick, I put like my stuff on my stick, and I went to the ocean. It was like a 4-kilometer walk. I had to do barefoot with wearing this like weird stick on my shoulders. It was kind of really tough. And eventually I arrived at the ocean and I cleaned myself and had a small swim. The tides were up and you couldn't really walk along the shore. And you also couldn't really walk through the jungle. At least not that jungle, because there's like swamps and it's like really, really thick, and you probably need a machete, which means that I needed to walk like at least 8 kilometers back and take a different route to the next village. And this means I arrived somewhere in the middle of the night. But luckily, people were awesome enough to still give me a place to sleep. I just found like I just went on Google Maps, like looked all like the location of this village that had like phone numbers. I just called everything, and like one woman's like, hey, I know someone from the city center, community center, you can sleep there. And when I arrived finally at like 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, in the middle of the night, I had already a place to sleep. Continue with my philosophy of walking off the beaten path of the main roads. I walked down these country roads in the middle of nowhere, then a car pulled up, and there was actually this one woman who really, really, really wanted to meet me. She just like talked to all the people like I passed and asked them in which direction I went, and then she just followed this direction with her car until she eventually found me. But eventually this dirt road which I walked ended up in the middle of nowhere, which was just one of those roads that just exist on the map, right? You feel like you're walking through a jungle, but if you look on your map, there is still a road. And eventually I arrived in like an oil processing, like an oil field, like with like oil pumps everywhere. And all of a sudden I was thinking like, oh, am I supposed to be here? And eventually I arrived in the fence. And the fence was just on the side of the road, right? So I was now inside a fence, inside some kind of like oil processing facility. And yeah, I just walked around and like talked to some of the guys there and asked them how I could now get out of this fence, and they helped me to get like to the security gate. And I walked out of the security gate, and like the security guy, who was like really cool, he didn't even care why the hell there's just a white guy who came out of the woods and he just walked into the middle of his oil processing facility. And now the craziest thing about this is that like 5 minutes after this, there were 2 cars who stopped and who gave me some food and water, and they told me that they're specifically there because they wanted to meet me. And apparently someone posted something on social media, maybe like an oil worker, maybe whatever, and yeah, they just like saw this and they're just like driving everywhere around trying to find me. So yeah, I eventually continued walking down the road. It took me a little bit longer because I had to walk back because I lost my stick. And yeah, when I arrived in the next village, it was already dark. And this was my first time actually having problems to finding a place to sleep, because in this village it was like an oil field village, and some people there know me, but there weren't really a lot of like places to sleep. right? Like there were a few churches, but the churches were empty. I went from bar to bar and asked everywhere, and eventually in one bar someone said, yeah, I know like an artist, you can go there. And yeah, this night I slept in the studio of like an indigenous artist. There's like really great paintings. And she was really a nice woman. So now I left the artist and I was still in like the oil region, but I decided to walk like some dirt roads to get off like the main road. And I expected first to not meet anybody who knows me, not to get any water, any food. I kind of still started to get hungry. I kind of arrived in the middle of like an oil compound, because kind of the only roads that go there lead right through the middle of an oil compound. Wasn't sure if I was allowed to be there. And then all of a sudden like a big black van arrived, and I was the manager of the facility. Not actually the manager, it was the owner. He walked out, he looked at me and was like, hey, I know you. I'm like, yeah, you know me? And he's like, yeah, I saw you in the paper. It's really cool what you do. Come on, I am gonna invite you to the headquarters of our oil company. And he got like a guy with a pickup, and he drove me to the headquarters. And the headquarters, he gave me food and water, and like everybody wanted to take pictures with me. Like 20 people took pictures with me. It was crazy. But yeah, other than the oil company, the whole day I just continued walking dirt roads, nothing really happening. And in the end of the day, I went back to the main road, and I just needed to walk down in the next village. The first house I walked by was just the guy coming on, was like, hey, I've got like a church next to my house. You want to sleep in the church? And then I slept in the church. And the next day my trip was almost over. I still had like only 2 days left. And yeah, it was a very quiet day, except for a car pulling up, and I asked them, hey, do you want a photo? And it was like an older woman, I think who was like 67, and she said, no, I want to walk with you. And this 67-year-old woman called Auntie Babs, she just walked like half of the day with me. Also like a TV crew came over, and at the end of the day I arrived like in a village called Granville. I had some problems with dogs as well, but you know, you sometimes learn how to deal with dogs. And with Granville, I got invited to just someone's home. You know, someone saw me and was like, hey, I like you, I want to like what you do, you want to sleep at my home. And then I slept at his home. And he was also a very spontaneous guy, because there was like a football game going on, and even he just invited me to a football game in the village. And like next day would be the last day. Now the last day really started completely different than it ended. It started with me walking through like some dirt roads. I was not really dirt roads, really, just like it were former dirt roads. Now these dirt roads were so overgrown that it's kind of still hard to walk there. Actually, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, I found like a guy searching for coconuts, and he's like, hey, come on, I invite you to my village. We're going to his village. And as soon as I arrived in his village, he gave me like a fruit called six-finger fruit, six-finger whatever. Kind of tasted really refreshing. And I looked at my phone and I got like several calls of like people who like wanted something from me. There was like the television showing up. There was the hunters who were showing up. There was like some different television who wanted to show up but didn't show up. And yeah, the next half of the journey, I continued walking the main road. And the main road really is the complete opposite, because the main road, everybody stops you all the time, like especially now. I did my best to not let people know that this is my last day and where I am, but like people just know. And eventually I arrived at the village sign of Ikakas, and yeah, there I met the farmer, and the farmer said he had some horses, and I talked to him about horses. We were waiting for like some camera guy, and the farmer was like, hey, you know what? You told me you can ride. Do you want to ride a horse? And I was like, no, I don't only want to ride a horse, I want to do the last part of this journey with a horse. So the farmer went and he brought me a horse. And yeah, the last part of this journey, when the TV crew eventually arrived, I rode through the village of Ikakas on a horse, which was so amazing. Like left and right, there were like crowds of people who like cheering me on. I on this horse right to the beach with like full speed, which just riding through the end of the country. I got up and I walked through the ocean, and I touched the ocean, and I completed this journey. Turned around, I had to give television interviews. everybody in this village was kind of partying. Like they brought me like fish they just caught fresh from the sea. I've got some fish soup. Like the hunters were there, were like partying in the night. I took so many selfies with people. Like I never took that many selfies in my life before. Like everybody came and took selfies with me. It was crazy, and eventually it got dark. And when everybody was busy partying on their own, I decided, you know what, I don't want to cheat. So I walked all the back from where I walked on the horse, and then all on my own with nobody around, just me, everybody being partying. I walked the whole way through the village on foot, so I have walked the whole entire country of Trinidad on foot. And then the end, when I arrived at the village and touched the ocean a second time, this time not after going on a horse. And this is when it finally hits a big, deep sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. Now what's next? I don't really know. I'm very spontaneous. I think I stay like another month in Trinidad. I have like several things I still want to do. And my next goal is to go to Venezuela. As I mentioned in the beginning, I want to live inside the Amazon rainforest. I want to see the Amazon rainforest. That's the whole goal of my journey. Trinidad should just be a place I pass through, but now it turns out it's not only a place I pass through, it's a place I walk through. And I now know more than a lot of other countries. Maybe it's the country I know most after Germany. I think I might be able to say that now. And it is also a country I really, really grew to love by now. There were the kindest people I met along the way, the most awesome people. And yeah, I want to learn a little bit more about the jungle and about the local people there. And this is now what I'm going to do in Trinidad. And yeah, if you're interested in how I go through the Amazon rainforest, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, because then you're going to be notified when I continue walking, maybe like what other cool things I do in Trinidad. And if you're still here, I want to say thank you very much for watching to the end, and I hope I might see you in my next video.